ladies and gentlemen. The paradox of modern relationships, this curious entanglement of wires, signals, and expectations. Consider for a moment the situation where you notice someone never calls or texts you first. At first glance, it feels like an affront, a silent declaration that you are perhaps unworthy of their attention. But is this truly the case? Or have we, once again, fallen victim to the grand illusion of attachment? You see, relationships like rivers are meant to flow. The current doesn't need a reason to move downstream, and yet it does. The moment we grasp at it, trying to bend it to our will, the river loses its spontaneity, its life force. So too does communication. If someone does not reach out to you, it isn't necessarily a statement about you. It is simply the way their stream is flowing or not flowing in this moment. The trouble arises when we tether our sense of self to whether or not someone initiates contact. We build narratives around their silence, weaving tales of neglect, indifference, or even rejection. Yet, these stories exist only in our minds. The truth is, their silence is simply that silence, and it is we who imbue it with meaning. But now comes the deeper inquiry: why does it matter so much to us? What part of us aches for the validation of their call, their text, their "Hey, I was thinking of you"? Could it be that we have mistaken their attention for a measure of our own worth? This is the great cosmic joke. For all along, the value we seek in others is already within us. The irony is that we chase their acknowledgement as if it were the sun, forgetting that we too are sources of light. And here lies the liberation, the realization that you do not need their call or text to be whole. When you let go of the need for them to make the first move, you free yourself from a needless burden. You allow the relationship to find its natural rhythm. Perhaps they will reach out, perhaps they won't. Either way, you remain untouched, your inner peace undisturbed. And if they never call, if they never text, ask yourself, is their absence not, in itself, a form of clarity? Life, in its infinite wisdom, often shows us who belongs in our story by removing those who don't. To cling to them is to grasp at shadows, missing the light that shines in other, more reciprocal connections. So let us approach this with a sense of humor and grace. If they never call or text first, it is not a loss. It is merely life inviting you to turn your gaze inward, to rediscover the abundance within. And when you see it, truly see it, you will laugh at the absurdity of ever needing their validation in the first place. Our relationships, the ever-changing dance of human connection. They are as fluid as water, as unpredictable as the wind, and as profound as the ocean depths. To understand their nature, we must first release ourselves from the notion that they are static, fixed, or bound by rules. Relationships, at their essence, are living, breathing entities. They are not simply defined by the labels we place upon them: friendship, romance, family, but by the energy exchanged within them. Consider the very foundation of a relationship. It is not merely about proximity or shared experiences, though these play their part. At its core, a relationship is an interplay, a give and take, a flow of energy between two beings. This energy is not measured by the frequency of messages or calls, nor by the grandiosity of gestures. It is measured by presence, by the authentic willingness to connect, to witness, and to be witnessed. But here's where we often stumble. We begin to approach relationships with a transactional mindset. If I give you my time, you should give me yours. This expectation transforms what should be a spontaneous, joyous dance into something heavy, bound by obligation. In doing so, we strip relationships of their vitality. We forget that the most meaningful connections are not those we demand, but those that unfold naturally, without force. Look to nature for guidance. Does the sun demand that the earth be grateful for its light? Does the tree insist that the bird build its nest among its branches? No, these relationships occur without coercion. The sun shines because it is its nature to shine. The tree stands firm and offers shelter because that is its purpose. In the same way, relationships flourish when they are allowed to arise from the genuine inclinations of the individuals involved. Yet in our modern world, where communication is instantaneous, we have cultivated an expectation of constant interaction. We equate the lack of a call or text with disinterest or neglect. But relationships are not built on notifications. They are built on understanding, patience, and the recognition that connection does not require perpetual contact. Sometimes the silence between two people can hold as much meaning as their words. Silence, too, is a form of communication. This brings us to an important truth: not all relationships are equal, nor are they meant to be. Some connections burn bright and fade quickly, like a shooting star. Others endure like the ancient mountains, weathering the storms of time. And still others may never fully form, existing only as fleeting moments of shared existence. This is not a failure, it is simply the way of things. Every relationship plays its role in the grand tapestry of our lives, teaching us lessons and shaping who we are. The nature of relationships, then, is not to be controlled or manipulated, but to be experienced. They are a reflection of life itself, imperfect, unpredictable, and endlessly evolving. When we approach them with openness and curiosity rather than expectation and fear, we allow them to flourish. We create space for authenticity and joy to emerge. So let us embrace relationships for what they are: fluid, dynamic, and beautifully imperfect. Let us release the need to force them into molds of our own design. For it is in the freedom of relationships that their true beauty is revealed. Whether they ebb or flow, endure or fade, they remind us of our shared humanity and the profound interconnectedness of all things. In the realm of human experience, attachment and freedom are two powerful, often opposing forces. They shape the way we approach relationships, the way we love, and the way we define ourselves. And to understand the tension between them is to gain insight into the very fabric of human connection and the source of much of our suffering. Attachment, at its core, arises from the mind's desire for security and certainty. It is the tether we place on people, situations, or outcomes, believing that by holding on tightly we can protect ourselves from loss or pain. When we become attached to someone, we are not simply enjoying their presence, we are clinging to the idea that they must remain in our lives in a certain way, on certain terms, and for a certain duration. This grasping creates an illusion of control. But life, as we know, is inherently uncontrollable. People change, situations evolve, and nothing remains fixed. When we anchor ourselves to attachment, we set ourselves up for inevitable disappointment. The tighter we hold on, the more we struggle when life moves in unexpected directions. We may begin to feel a creeping anxiety, a fear of losing what we are so desperately trying to preserve. In this way, attachment often becomes the seed of suffering. On the other hand, freedom in relationships is not about indifference or detachment. It is about loving and connecting without clinging. It is the ability to appreciate someone fully in the present moment, without demanding that they fulfill our expectations or conform to our desires. Freedom honors the truth that every individual is a sovereign being with their own path, choices, and timing. It understands that love and connection are most beautiful when they are given freely, not when they are coerced or demanded. Think of a bird perched on your open palm. If you close your hand tightly around it, you might prevent it from flying away for a time, but you also trap and suffocate it. If you keep your hand open, the bird may choose to stay or to leave, but in its freedom, it will always return to the place where it feels safe, respected, and loved. So it is with people. When we give others the space to be themselves, we cultivate relationships rooted in mutual respect and authenticity. Yet this balance between attachment and freedom is not easy to achieve. Society often teaches us that love is about possession, that to love someone means to have them, to make them ours. We see it in romanticized portrayals of relationships, where jealousy is mistaken for passion and control is mistaken for care. But true love is not possessive. True love liberates. It says, I cherish you not because I own you, but because I honor who you are, even if that means you must sometimes walk away. The freedom in relationships also extends to ourselves. When we are attached, we often lose sight of our own identity, sacrificing our needs, desires, and boundaries to keep someone close. We may bend ourselves out of shape to fit their mold, fearing that if we show our true selves, we might be abandoned. But in doing so, we lose the very freedom that allows us to thrive. To love freely is to honor not only the other person's individuality, but also our own. It is to remain whole within ourselves, even as we connect deeply with another. This does not mean we must never feel attachment. Attachment is a natural part of being human. It reflects our deep need for connection. But it is important to recognize when attachment crosses the line into clinging, when it begins to stifle rather than nurture. The key is not to eliminate attachment, but to temper it with awareness. When we notice our grasping tendencies, we can gently remind ourselves to let go, to trust the flow of life, and to embrace the uncertainty of relationships. To let go of attachment is not to lose love, but to deepen it. It is to move beyond the fear-based need to control and to step into the expansive, transformative power of unconditional connection. It is to understand that the people we love are not ours to keep. They are fellow travelers on this journey of life, here to teach us, to challenge us, and to remind us of the beauty of impermanence. In the end, attachment binds and freedom liberates. But they are not enemies, they are two sides of the same coin. When we navigate the delicate balance between them, we discover the true essence of connection, one that is not rooted in fear but in love, not in possession but in respect, and not in demand but in grace. It is in this space of freedom that relationships flourish, and the heart finds its greatest joy. Communication, like the rivers that carve through valleys, is meant to flow freely and naturally. It is the lifeblood of relationships, the bridge between hearts and minds. Yet all too often we attempt to regulate this flow, to dam it up with expectations or force it into channels of our own design. This approach creates tension, misunderstanding, and a sense of imbalance, for communication, by its very nature, resists control. The flow of communication is rooted in authenticity. When two people truly connect, words, gestures, and even silences become a seamless exchange of energy. This does not mean that communication must always be frequent or elaborate. In fact, the depth of a relationship is not measured by the number of messages exchanged, but by the quality of understanding they foster. A single heartfelt word can carry more weight than 1,000 empty phrases. Yet many of us fall into the trap of overanalyzing the flow of communication. We worry when someone does not call or text us first, interpreting their silence as disinterest or rejection. But communication is not a transaction. It is not meant to be a tally of who reached out last or who spoke more. To treat it this way is to miss its essence, which is a spontaneous, unforced sharing of oneself. Consider how water flows. It does not ask permission to move, nor does it concern itself with where it is going. It simply flows, finding its way around obstacles, through cracks, and across vast landscapes. Communication, too, thrives when it is allowed this freedom. When we stop demanding that someone communicate with us in a specific way or at a specific time, we create space for them to reach out authentically, driven not by obligation but by a genuine desire to connect. But this does not mean that communication should be passive or neglected. Just as a river needs a source to sustain its flow, relationships require care and attention to keep their lines of communication open. To let the flow of communication dry up entirely is to allow disconnection to take root. The key is to strike a balance to maintain open channels without forcing the current. Silence, often feared and misunderstood, is also part of the flow. In a world that prizes constant connectivity, we have come to view silence as a void, something to be filled. Yet silence can be a powerful form of communication. It offers space for reflection, for emotions to settle, and for deeper understanding to emerge. Two people who are truly attuned to each other can sit in silence without discomfort, knowing that their connection transcends words. The flow of communication is also deeply influenced by intention. Why do we reach out to others? Is it to share something meaningful, to offer support, or simply to connect? Or is it driven by fear of being forgotten, of losing someone, or of appearing indifferent? When communication stems from fear, it often feels forced or heavy. But when it arises from love, curiosity, or a genuine desire to share, it becomes light, natural, and fulfilling. There is also the matter of listening, which is an integral part of the flow of communication. Often we think of communication as primarily about speaking, but true connection comes from the ability to listen deeply, without judgment, and with an open heart. Listening is the act of receiving someone else's energy, their thoughts and feelings, without rushing to respond or interpret. It is through listening that we create a space for understanding and empathy, allowing the flow of communication to deepen and strengthen. Modern technology, while a boon in many ways, has complicated the flow of communication. Text messages, emails, and social media posts allow us to stay connected across distances, but they can also create a sense of urgency and pressure. The expectation of instant replies and constant updates can suffocate the natural rhythm of interaction. We must remind ourselves that meaningful communication is not about speed or frequency, but about presence and intention. Finally, the flow of communication is not just about how we interact with others, but also about how we connect with ourselves. Before we can communicate effectively with someone else, we must first be in tune with our own thoughts and feelings. When we are disconnected from ourselves, our words can feel hollow, and our interactions can become performative. But when we speak from a place of self-awareness and authenticity, our communication becomes a true expression of who we are. To honor the flow of communication is to approach it with patience, mindfulness, and a willingness to let go of rigid expectations. It is to trust that, like a river, it will find its way sometimes rushing, sometimes meandering, and sometimes resting in stillness. When we embrace this flow, we open ourselves to deeper, more meaningful connections, and we allow our relationships to evolve naturally, guided not by force, but by the gentle currents of mutual understanding. Understanding inner value is one of the most profound journeys a person can undertake. It is not merely about self-esteem or confidence, but about recognizing the inherent worth that exists within you, independent of external validation, achievements, or relationships. To grasp this is to unlock a profound source of peace, resilience, and freedom. Inner value is not something that can be given to you by others, nor is it something that can be taken away. It is a constant, like the sun hidden behind the clouds. Even when obscured by doubt or the judgments of others, it remains steady, waiting to be revealed. Yet many of us struggle to see it. We live in a world that often measures worth by what we do, what we own, or how we are perceived. This external focus pulls us away from the quiet truth of our intrinsic value. From an early age, we are taught to seek validation outside of ourselves. Praise from parents, grades in school, likes on social media, all of these become markers of our worth. We internalize the idea that our value is conditional, that it depends on meeting certain standards or gaining the approval of others. Over time, this external dependency can erode our sense of self, leaving us vulnerable to rejection, criticism, and comparison. But true inner value is not conditional. It does not fluctuate based on external circumstances. It is not diminished by failure or amplified by success. It simply is. To understand this is to realize that your worth is not tied to your actions, roles, or relationships. You are not valuable because of what you do or how others see you. You are valuable because you exist. This is a radical truth, one that challenges the narrative society often feeds us. The journey to understanding inner value begins with self-awareness. It requires us to turn inward and examine the beliefs we hold about ourselves. Are these beliefs rooted in truth, or are they echoes of past experiences, criticisms, or societal expectations? Many of us carry unexamined stories about our worth, stories that tell us we are not enough, that we must achieve more, look a certain way, or be loved by others to have value. To reclaim our inner worth, we must confront and dismantle these narratives. This process often involves sitting with discomfort. It is not easy to face the parts of ourselves that feel unworthy or inadequate, but in doing so, we open the door to healing. We begin to see that these feelings of inadequacy are not truths, but wounds that can be tended to with compassion, patience, and care. Through this work, we start to connect with the deeper self, the part of us that exists beyond ego and identity. A key step in understanding inner value is learning to separate your sense of self from external outcomes. When you attach your worth to things like career success, relationships, or social status, you place your value on a fragile foundation. These things can change, falter, or disappear, leaving you feeling lost. But when you root your worth in something unchanging, your inherent nature, you find stability amidst life's uncertainties. And practices like mindfulness and self-reflection can help you reconnect with this deeper sense of self. Meditation, for example, teaches you to observe your thoughts and emotions without becoming attached to them. It shows you that you are not your achievements, your failures, or even your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. This shift in perspective is transformative. It allows you to see yourself as whole and complete, just as you are. Another vital aspect of understanding inner value is self-compassion. Often we are our own harshest critics, quick to judge ourselves for perceived shortcomings. But true inner value is nurtured through kindness, not criticism. When you treat yourself with the same love and care you would offer to a dear friend, you reinforce your sense of worth. You remind yourself that you are deserving of respect and kindness simply because you exist. Understanding inner value also changes the way you relate to others. When you recognize your own worth, you no longer seek validation from external sources. This frees you from the need to please or conform. You can engage in relationships from a place of wholeness rather than neediness or fear. You are able to give and receive love freely without attaching your sense of self to how others respond to you. Moreover, when you see your own value, you are better equipped to recognize the value in others. You approach relationships with empathy and respect, understanding that everyone has their own intrinsic worth. This perspective fosters deeper connections, built on mutual appreciation rather than dependence. The world may not always affirm your inner value. There will be moments when you feel overlooked, misunderstood, or undervalued by others. But these moments are opportunities to turn inward and reaffirm your worth. They remind you that true validation comes from within, not from external approval. Ultimately, understanding inner value is about coming home to yourself. It is about realizing that you are enough not because of anything you have done or will do, but because you are. This understanding is liberating. It frees you from the endless pursuit of external validation and allows you to live authentically, guided by your own truth. When you truly grasp your inner value, you become unshakable. You can navigate life's ups and downs with grace, knowing that your worth is not on the line. You can step into relationships and challenges with confidence, knowing that nothing can diminish the light within you. This is the power of understanding inner value. It grounds you in your own unchanging worth and empowers you to live with courage, peace, and joy. To control this idea that we can shape the world around us, direct outcomes, and orchestrate the behavior of others is one of the most persistent illusions in human life. It is a comforting thought, a shield we use to ward off uncertainty and chaos. Yet, as alluring as it may be, the illusion of control often leads us down a path of frustration, disappointment, and suffering. At its core, the illusion of control stems from a desire for predictability and stability. We long to feel safe and secure, and the mind tricks us into believing that if we can just manage every detail, we can ensure a favorable outcome. In relationships, this manifests as attempts to dictate how others should feel, act, or respond to us. In life more broadly, it appears as a constant striving to control circumstances, events, and even the future. But here is the great cosmic irony.